This episode is brought to you by Sunrise Banks and Lifetime. Welcome to another episode of BTT Discussions. I'm your host, Mike Jackson, aka CEO and founder of Black Tech Talent. Today we have a special guest on the show, Peter Young, aka Coach Young of Minnesota Esports. Peter, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, brother?
Man, I can't complain. Life is beautiful.
That's good to hear, man.
So today we want to talk about your journey and kind of how you got to where you are today. So let's start off with your current title. You have a company called Minnesota Esports. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll jump back into your journey.
Yeah. So again, my name is Peter Young. I'm the founder and executive director of Minnesota Esports Club. We're going on our third year of operation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides youth esports solutions across the state of Minnesota.
Awesome. And is there any specific reason you decided to go with nonprofit?
The biggest thing was because we want to be able to go for a lot of grant funding. We want to do a lot of fundraisers. We give everything back to the community. And just so everyone knows, none of us have paid ourselves a dime. We're all volunteers, including myself. I work a 9 to 5, and we just put all of our volunteer hours back into the nonprofit to make sure that, kids are successful in the space. And we figured it was the best way, to make it successful due to so many for-profit ventures in esports that sometimes fail because of it, because they're paying employees more than creating, opportunities. And I think it needs to be a more genuine activation before you can even get to that point.
Definitely. And I want to dive more into that and kind of the opportunity and why it's important. But before we even get to that, let's talk about kind of what sparked your interest and what were the early days like for you when it came to video games and technology.
So for me personally, I had a pretty rough childhood, man. And I ain't going to go into all of those details, but what I can tell you is that gaming was always a nice outlet for me. I was always a gamer when I was a kid, and my parents didn't really support it at all, and didn't like me being on the game. They wanted me, doing a lot more traditional sports, just doing things that align more with their agendas. And what I've noticed is that when you empower kids in general to get into gaming and provide opportunities for them, you actually create a path to higher education. And I just seen so many roadblocks in esports. So I wanted to try and break down those barriers and then provide opportunities for people who normally wouldn't have access to esports, and kids who maybe have all the access in the world, but their parents don't support it. And then providing that education to the community so they can understand the benefits of gaming and why that's important. A little bit about myself, I play fighting games on a regular basis. My main game is Dragon Ball Fighters that I practice and getting ready to compete in. I haven't hit the brackets yet, but I'm really excited to. I used to play a lot of Smash. That was a big start of my fighting game career. And then now I play a lot of RuneScape casually. That's just me. I love to play old school RuneScape. I don't know if we got any fans out there, but that's kind of how my journey started in gaming itself. And I've just been gaming ever since I was a kid.
Nice. And that's interesting. And that's why I like to go back to people's kind of origin stories, because it's different every time, and it's really good to let our listeners, whether it's somebody else in the Black tech community who's looking to get into gaming or is in it early, or whether it's somebody at one of the tech companies that's kind of trying to understand the culture more and understand how to be more inclusive and what those journeys are. And so it's good to see the patterns of what's similar and how certain things are different. We had in our last episode a video game developer, and he was supported pretty early as far as his older brother was a gamer, so that kind of sparked his interest in being as good as his brother. And his sister was more on the corporate professional side, and she taught him how to be poised on that, and then he was able to pursue the education part of what he needed to do. And so when you talk about like your parents not really supporting it, let's talk about, because of the generational differences, kind of what that time was like. So like what age were you at this time, and then kind of what years was it, and talk about what the gaming industry looked like back then.
So back then it was like a leisure activity. It was just a form of entertainment. And it was, and I think some of this still trickles into this day, is it's meant to spend maybe 30 minutes of your time to do this set activity. Like maybe you're playing Crash Bandicoot with the family, or playing some Super Mario. Like that was like the ideal gaming realm. Any time spent beyond that was considered wasted, or you could be doing better things, or whatever that looks like. And there's two sides to the coin. There's a lot of competitive gaming, and then there's casual gaming, and that I think when I was young, there wasn't like a huge scene for esports or big gaming at all. I think in general, it just wasn't like a supported thing. There was more like traditional card game tournaments than there were like video game tournaments. Like I would go into Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments all the time when I was a kid and all that stuff. But like when it came to like video games and stuff like that, not until, at least for me personally, Super Smash Brothers was when I was going to like game stores and like actually like competing a little bit, and like meeting other gamers. Before that, I felt like it was really, really hard. It was normally like, you hung out with some kids and maybe they had a Nintendo 64 and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
it wasn't as like integrated in our society as it is now. 100%.
definitely, definitely. And we had you recently at our community tech fest. Appreciate you coming through and bringing out your game systems and stuff like that. And one of the goals that we had, and it was really the biggest goal, was to just expose more Black children to the different opportunities in the tech world. And obviously, with esports, growing and being this huge industry, people will still have that issue of their parents not being supportive or really understanding, right? And you have people who are gamers that would like to be game developers. And so it's important for people to see the representation on all different levels. So for you, obviously your organization is doing this as well, but for your experience at the Tech Fest, like what was that like?
I absolutely loved it. I think it was one of our best activations for tabling at a booth and able to like really show our impact on youth in general. I mean, we had one of the busiest booths by far. Care 11 was there and showed us a lot of love. Like it was just like an amazing opportunity for us in general. And I'd recommend any Black owned nonprofit, Black owned business, people that are looking to be entrepreneurs, or in the tech world in general. Like we had a lot of guys coming up asking for internships that just got out of like software boot camps and stuff like that. Like it was just a place where Black people can be surrounded by people that have similar interests,
Yeah,
in that field, because to go back to like when we were younger, like when I was young, I grew up in Jeffrey Manor, you know what I'm saying, in Chicago, and it was looked down on if you were the smart dude, you know what I mean?
right.
Like it was frowned upon, like they were like, man, Peter, why are you playing games? Why don't you just come play football or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like it needs to be more like accessible, and where we
Yeah,
don't feel bad. And I think black tech talent and the community tech fest in general shows that, like, look how many people really do, like, can get into this industry and really excel in it, and be leaders.
definitely. And like I said, that was our biggest goal. We had our summit that took place back in June, and the summit was largely, about recruiting and kind of exposing our community of talent to, these corporate opportunities, right? We had the pitch competition, so there was the entrepreneurial part, and then we had kind of like a small demo day thing, nothing on the scale of what we did with the Community Tech Fest. So after we did that, it was like, okay, we proved that there's Black talent out here in the tech side. Now let's do an event that shows the pipeline portion of what we're always talking about, right? Exposing kids early. And so one of the things that we did was we made sure that parents understood that even if you're not in tech, we want you to come bring your children. So you can expose them to technology, but B, so you can understand how to support them, right? A lot of times you'll have organizations that will try to do, similar events. And what happens is there's no follow up, there's no conversation, there's no community around what just happened. So, as you mentioned, people inquiring with you about internships or job opportunities or just wanting to learn about your organization overall so that they can stay in tune and then learn from you, like, oh, so my son isn't wasting his time playing video games. There's potential here to have a career, to compete and earn money on the side, or whatever it may be. So I think that was extremely important in, why we had put together what we put together. And so I wanted to elaborate on that because of what you mentioned about your parents not necessarily being supportive, not because they were bad parents, they just didn't understand it and there wasn't a career for it at the time. And I wanted our listeners to understand that part, because we may have younger listeners who are like, oh, my parents don't care, they support, they buy me every game system, they blah blah blah. But it was a different time too. Right.
Exactly. I mean, and to your point, there was a bunch of parents who had their kids with them and they were taking our business cards, asking us all types of questions like, how do we get involved? We never heard anything about this before. Like structured gaming, what does that look like? And, like one of the biggest things that we always say to open parents' eyes is like, we sent 3 kids full ride scholarships to Bethany Lutheran College. Like that's huge.
Yeah.
Creating a path to higher education through gaming, like that's the goal, man. And your odds of getting a scholarship for gaming, I promise you, are a lot better than getting it for playing D1 football. Like
Yeah.
it's just an amazing opportunity to see that firsthand, man. It changed my life personally to see what that's like, because I would have loved that when I was a kid. It's like, why not provide this for everyone?
Exactly. And that leads to the next question. So because you were in that middle space where obviously you grew up with video games, it was there, the early, probably, I don't know if you had Funko Land in Chicago, but
Oh, I have Funko Land. Yeah.
Funko Land to then the game transition to GameStop and their little competitions and stuff they started doing in store. So there's that transitional period between that and to what it is today, right? Where there are multi-million-dollar competitions. So in that middle space, what were you doing to kind of nurture your interest and your skill set?
So like when I guess if we're going back to when I was younger, I would want to get involved in gaming anywhere I could. So when I was 16, I actually got my first job at Hollywood Video when they had a Game Crazy attached to it, because I
Yeah.
wanted to work at Game Crazy so bad. Like that was like my dream, man. Like that's all I wanted to do was just go to Game Crazy and just sell games, talk about games, and just do that. I would go there every day, like literally every day. I'd bike up there after school, whatever it was, and
Mhm.
I go play Super Smash Brothers Brawl. That's what was out at the time. And some of my older friends from high school that I had met that would go there, you know, we would all play, and that is when I got my first sense of community as like a teenager, like what it's like gaming, being around others like that share similar interests. And then yeah, like I said, I just wanted to be a part of that environment, so I worked at Hollywood Video, and whenever I could be a part of anything Game Crazy related, I would. You had to be 18 to work there, so that's the thing,
Yeah.
because it's like they have like a pawn shop type of thing, so you always have to be 18 to work at any game store. So
Yeah.
I tried to get as close as I could, but never ended up working there. They ended up closing down, sadly. But then I ended up working at GameStop shortly after. As soon as I turned 18, I worked at GameStop right off of 136 in Crystal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yup. I worked at that GameStop right next to that Cub Foods for a while. And that was the awesome experience. I had a really awesome mentor that I had met there that was super into gaming, really like talented gamer in general, a really good friend of mine today. And I just saw like, and he was like a cool dude, you know what I mean? He wasn't like this stereotypical like nerdy gamer. Like he was actually like a really cool guy who was also into games, and I was like, that is so cool, like I want to be somewhat like that. And just seeing influencers like that in that space is what inspired me to like go further and like show other kids that, like, what I'm saying, gaming is cool, and you can be cool gaming too. You don't have to fit a stereotype to be a part of this,
Right.
this community.
Exactly. Yeah, I used to live across the street from there. behind that baseball field.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to go before it was GameStop. It was like Video Update or something like that.
Oh man, I don't know nothing about that, but that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a video store, and then GameStop bought it once they kind of transitioned out of the VHS.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So then did you go to college? Like what was your second part of your life kind of like?
Yeah. So I actually so my story is very interesting. My junior year of high school, I was 18 years old and I got my GED. And I left. I actually left high school. I took a gap year. Because all my friends, their senior year would have been in 2012. I'm 29 for reference.
Right.
And all their senior year would have been 2012. So I waited. I lived at home, and during this time I was actually in foster care. So like I said, I have a pretty crazy story. Like my parents were both drug dealers. They had got caught, and me and my brother got put into foster care, and we were really lucky. We were in the same home. Our foster parent was a really close friend of ours, and so me and my brother were able to stay together, which is really rare
Yeah.
in when you're getting into that. And anyways, when I turned 18, I ended up moving out, and my mom got out. I went to go live with her and help support her as she was getting out and whatnot. And that's when I got my job at GameStop. So like I was working there and chilling, and then I was like, I really want more than this, and that was always my plan. And I applied for the University of Mankato, and I got in, and that was my freshman and sophomore experience was at Mankato State University, and I started the MNSU longboard club there. And this is where like I got into like community engagement and creating clubs and stuff like that. And I was sponsored by the local skate shop, Fresh Clothing and Accessories, and then I ended up being the manager there. And I was working there for a while, and then there was this awesome game store called We Got Game, and a really close friend of mine that was the owner offered me a job there, and so I started working in We Got Game, and they wanted to get more into like the community scene,
Mhm.
and like getting like, because we sell a lot of games and all that stuff, but we didn't have like tournaments and stuff like that. So we started hosting like Magic the Gathering tournaments, and we started hosting Super Smash Brothers tournaments, and started seeing all that involvement. So I was just like, man, this is so cool, seeing this firsthand. People want a place to come and game, and this was like my first experience like into gaming,
Mhm.
when it comes to like a community aspect. I was always just like a almost a secret gamer. Like I gamed, and that was something that I loved, but I never shared it with like the community.
Mhm.
After working there for a while, I ended up moving back out to the cities. I was helping run the store in Uptown. And then I decided I wanted to go back to college at North Hennepin Community College. So I actually finished my degree there. I got my degree in liberal arts, and I work at X Rocker, so
Mhm.
it's such a long story. It's crazy, and how it all turned out. And I met an awesome mentor that really like changed my life, and he got me into web design and development. So I started programming in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I taught myself. I'm completely self-taught, and I just worked really hard. I did freelance work. I did some graphic design for a brewery for a while. I was doing some web work there, and then I landed a really nice web gig. And I got really into the scene. And anyways, long story short, because I have a crazy story, but at the end of the day, I actually ended up at a high school. And I was like I was thinking about being a teacher, and I wanted to learn more about it. And so I was a paraprofessional there, and how everything connected with Minnesota Esports Club, all this stuff was. This is when I was like I'm really into gaming. Like this is a huge part of my life. I used to stream full time on Twitch during this time, and really, really getting into it. And a lot of the kids knew that I was a gamer, and they wanted to start a club. So they wanted to get this club going, and they were like, oh hey, Mr. Young, like you're a gamer, right? You're always wearing gamer t-shirts, blah blah blah, would you be our supervisor? And I was like, heck yeah. So we started meeting in the lunchroom, and we started meeting in the lunchroom. We were playing Super Smash Bros after school, and then we started getting interest from other kids that wanted to play other games like League of Legends and Overwatch and all this other stuff that was out at the time. And long story short, we were like, you know what? Let's compete in a competition. So we joined the high school esports league, and we were Wyzetta Esports Club, and we were just a school a school sponsored organized, or not even a school sponsored organization. We were a student group that I was supervisor of, and we competed in that tournament. And our League of Legends team got first place in the 2018 Winter Open in a national held competition where thousands of schools were entering. And we were like, holy crap, this is a big deal now. Like, these kids need way more support than even I can give them. You know what I mean? And that is pretty much when Wyzetta Esports Club was born. We started pushing back on the school, trying to get them to make an official program. They weren't really like biting. There was other things that they had in mind, like football was huge that year. They had just got a state championship, so that was a huge focus. So no quarrels for them not getting on it. But long story short, we had a banquet with the community, with all the parents of the kids and all that stuff, and we asked them, we're like, do you guys want us to like go to the school board and talk about this, or do you guys want us to start a nonprofit and like get things going right off the bat? And it was almost unanimous. Everyone was like, you know how it is going through school systems. Let's start a nonprofit and get these kids the support that they need. Yeah. And that's what we did. So beyond that, we then got a location in Plymouth, Minnesota. We secured a location, and we would have kids like bring in their own PCs and stuff at the time, because we didn't have anything. Like, I brought my whole office set up there, man. We just had some tables, we had some raggedy chairs, you know what I'm saying? And then our first sponsor, X Rocker, came in. This is before I was even employed by them. They offered to help support our venue, and they got us a bunch of gaming chairs, and later on some desks. And we started from that, and we started securing sponsors. We started, getting the kids the support that they needed. We got colleges recruiting from our program. 3 of the kids from that League of Legends team went on to get full ride scholarships. And then it's just, all happened so fast, man. And then pretty much to conclude this monologue, we then found that beyond Wyzetta, other parks and recs, community centers, and people wanted access to something like this. They started knocking on our door. They started asking us, like, how do we get involved? How do I get into this space? And that we were like, we have to support everyone. And that's when we became Minnesota Esports Club. And we started hiring a bunch of coaches, community managers, people that just want to get involved and help support the community in general. And now we're partnered with over 9 communities that to provide esports solutions all across the state. So sorry for the whole monologue. It's a long story, man.
Yeah, it's a long story, but it's good. That's why we're here, right? So you can get your story out there, and we can bring more exposure to what's going on, and the journey that it takes to get there, so we can inspire more people. And that's awesome. Congratulations on everything you were able to put together, and just everything you fought through to get to where you're at, and all the things you're doing to continue moving forward. So very, very proud of you. So now at this point, you mentioned kind of in the beginning, like, everybody's volunteering, nobody's getting paid yet. So, as you grow, where do you see your vision going to make this, scalable, to make sure everybody's, being taken care of so they can take care of their families, and putting that full-time work to do this? Like, what assistance do you need? And like, where do you see yourself growing to?
That's the best question. So the biggest thing, what we've been doing currently is at least giving people job experience so that they can go on to the next place and do that currently where we're at as a company. Where we want to be is we actually just brought on lawyers that are helping us with massive grant writing initiatives, adding STEM to our program so we qualify for more initiatives in general, not just esports. So like, for example, all MEC members get access to a 3D game design course as well through SadiCon Labs that we're just about to start kicking off. We're so excited about. And then so really through grants, donations, fundraising, community events, like I said, we host events for the general public as well. So I was telling you before that we have a Tetris tournament going on today, and then we have a Smash tournament every Saturday, and those are open for the general public. They can actually come in, they pay their venue fee, and then we provide pricing for them, and then the rest of the money goes back into the organization to keep the lights on, buy new equipment, You know what I'm saying? If kids need like a scholarship because they can't afford it, that's what helps pay for those things. So we just do everything that we can to do that. As for paying our employees, as soon as we start getting like massive grants, donations, I don't know, maybe someone wants to come in and really help support this mission, we'd love to have you. That's what it'll take to really make this mission happen. But luckily, we've been surrounded by people who really care about the space and just want to give back, because they've had a similar background with me where like gaming wasn't supported. But yeah, that's definitely where we see us. We plan on expanding and providing support to every Parks and Rec in the state of Minnesota if that's what they're looking for. Because they're looking for new ways to engage their community, because other activities are down, but esports is through the roof.
Yeah.
So
I like it. I like it. So what is kind of the process of kids or people in general kind of joining your organization? So a parent met you at the TechFest, for instance, they want to take it to the next level. What's that process look like?
yeah, so they just go right on our website. We actually have like a registration platform that goes through all that information. But in short, it costs $150 for 3-month access to all MEC services. That means you get access to all MEC venues. You get access to all MEC community events for free that are normally charged for the general public. MEC members actually get to participate in those events for free. And then on top of that, they get coaching, access to content creation initiatives, and more, and team building is and brand facilitation. Like we do a lot of we work with, for example, the Wayzata Compass program, and they actually develop logos and jersey templates for us, and then we develop that branding for each individual chapter of Minnesota Esports Club. For example, we have a Wayzata chapter, we have a Bemidji chapter, we have a Prior Lake chapter, a Maple Grove chapter, a Phyllis Wheatley chapter, and the list goes on. And what that means is they become a part of that team based on their location, on where they're at. Does that make sense? So with that being said, they get the biggest thing about esports, what I was talking about before, is these high school official programs. A lot of the time, it's one teacher or one paraprofessional or one tech advisor who is doing everything. He's the director of finance, he is the head coach, he is the director of marketing. And it's too much for one job and gives the kids a disjustice. So that's why we come in and make sure that they actually receive the proper coaching that they get. For example, Mike, I don't know if you played any traditional sports, but see, I played football, for example, and I played rugby
for a while.
There's an offensive lineman coach. You know what I'm saying? There is a wide receiver coach. You know what I'm saying? There is there is a defensive lineman coach. There's coaches that specify in each individual, you know what I'm saying? Let's just say genre or like category. Same concept needs to apply for esports. So we treat it the same as traditional sports. So we provide coaches from each individual game that they're experts in. So we have Valorant coaches, Overwatch coaches, Super Smash Bros coaches, etc. So that the kids are actually like learning from someone who's really in the scene. Some of these guys are huge competitors that have amazing track records and experience in each of these spaces. And this is why we have multiple national and state championship titles for all the tournaments that we compete in, because these kids are getting more support than normal. And we're just a little nonprofit. There's, there's 6A schools that aren't as successful because they just haven't treated it the same they would a traditional sport. And once people start doing that, they're all going to see that success 100%. And we're kind of proving that model and providing a pathway for other people to get into the space. Not just the traditional, hey, let's pay this guy and then he'll do everything, and then hopefully the team will do good. It's so much more than that.
Definitely. And so when your members compete in competitions, do you have your own teams where a portion of the winnings come back to the organization, or is it more of training them and getting prepared to kind of do their own thing?
So there's like two options actually. So like there's a lot of like local events. Let's say like I'm a fighting game player, right? And they are a part of Minnesota Esports Club. We actually just help them and train them up, and they can go to local competitions all across the state of Minnesota. That happens on a regular basis. They're like fighting games is a great example. There's a lot of like fighting game tournament organizers all around where you can go in there, you pay $10 and you put your quarter up, you go and you fight against other people that are playing the same game as you. And if you win, man, that's their money.
Yeah.
When they compete in like the high school esports league or the Minnesota varsity league, they actually are getting like hands-on eyes from collegiate programs that are actually looking for kids that play these games because they need to recruit.
Mhm.
So, and this is where like they're getting these scholarship offers. On top of that, the high school esports league, for example, they actually provide scholarships for their like top 8 teams for each game that is played, or I think it's like top 3 or something like that. And multiple of our kids have actually gotten scholarships. It's like anywhere from the range of like $500 to like $2,500, for a scholarship to go to college. And as soon as they qualify for college, that just goes right into their FAFSA or however that's applied, or they'll give them like a voucher depending on like time periods and stuff like that and what that looks like. But that's the best part. It's not really about like, for example, like we don't have like a professional team. And like
Yeah.
professional teams, when if you play like League of Legends, for example, and you're in like a big tournament, there's like millions of dollars on the line and stuff like that. And normally, like how teams do it is they'll pay their team like a salary, and then whenever that team wins, it normally goes back to the organization, but they have like some type of kickbacks and things like that too that they do to offset that as well. So it's kind of different depending on like the level. Like think of us like the AAU basketball of esports.
Got it. And would there be interest in the future of having an official team, or is this your current model, the model you want to stick with?
We've actually had a lot of people asking us that. The biggest thing is making sure that we can provide all the resources possible for like let's say a semi-pro team. That's what a lot of people do. Like
Mhm.
there's a really cool venue in Minneapolis called Black Ice, and they actually like they sponsor players, and like they'll sponsor individual fighting game players, or they'll have like people that play on like a team. I'm not sure if they have any team-based sponsors at the moment, but I would imagine they want to maybe get a Valorant team at some point, or an Overwatch team, or a Call of Duty team. And what that entails is normally like paying for like travel costs for them to go to any tournament, stuff like that. And we're not in a position to do that currently, but that we have gotten a lot of ask for that. The biggest thing also is fielding the team itself. So like if it's a team-based game and we get like one guy who's like semi-pro in League of Legends, but if we don't have 4 others, like it's better that we just point him to someone that we know that's actually doing something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. I like it. I like it a lot. So, at this point, you've built up Minnesota Esports Club. You've gotten some sponsors. You've obviously gotten a number of members and won competitions and just drummed up a lot of attention. So for 2022, what's your big priority? Like what's kind of keeping you up at night?
so our biggest thing is and I don't know if I can even say this, but having more access to inner city schools, because right now it's a bunch of middle to rich kids that are not African American, that are not living in urban areas, that have access to all this stuff, and that's just not fair. Because I guarantee you put controllers and consoles and computers in the hands of Black children here in America, in the state of Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota and all that, they're going to have those same opportunities and they're going to be just as good. It's just they haven't had access to this stuff. So that's where we're pushing really hard. We're working with community organizations like Phyllis Wheatley Community Center and 30,000 Feet to really like get into that community and provide all those resources for them. For example, 30,000 Feet, they pay for a bunch of their kids to be a part of our organization, and they'll get a van and bring all their kids to our Plymouth location and have them come and play and see this environment firsthand, and they're showing interest in maybe getting something like that for themselves one day. Phyllis Wheatley, that's exactly what they wanted. So they went and asked us, what's the best way for us to build an esports lab? So we go in there, we help them, get all their resources that they already had to put together to get the community to come in and be a part of that initiative. And because that's the biggest thing, is not having access to this stuff. It's a very favoritism to kids can afford it, and it's
Yeah,
just not fair.
yeah, definitely. And so are you seeing like pushback at all when you're going and having these meetings? So for instance, like for us as Black Tech Talent, we're helping our people, but we're also a Black owned company. So we're experiencing some of the same racial biases that we're trying to help our people overcome. Luckily, from the position that we're in, and we're a for-profit business, we're able to bring in different revenues and do different things and work out different sponsorships and don't really have certain limitations. So, when one organization or person doesn't believe, we go find other ones, and then we do stuff like the summit that we had, or the community tech fest, or the exclusive brunch we did over the summer. We put out tons of content. We're able to do the podcast, which is also sponsored, pretty much been sponsored since the beginning. So, but we still hear things like, are there Black people in technology? Like, are there enough Black people in technology, or are they any good? Even with the at the Tech Fest, Mayor Fry came and did the keynote and everything like that. And that Monday, I think he posted the picture that me and him took, and the picture of him up on stage, and kind of reiterated some of the event. And like, I'm reading all the comments that he's getting, and like one of them that stood out was oh, it's not good to have, hiring requirements or minimums or quotas if the talent isn't there. So even this person who's commenting, which is obviously out of ignorance, is assuming that that we've done some sort of deal where they have to hire Black people, whether they're talented or not, which is never the case for any industry, business, educational institution. Like, you still have to pull your weight to get in the door. Otherwise, the programs won't work in the first place, right? And that person that he just came and keynoted. We haven't worked out any type of deal for for anything, right? He's just acknowledging the fact that it's an issue, and they have their own initiatives that they've put together, and we will collab for 2022 for different things. But these are the type of comments that we get, that we face, being Black leaders and what we're doing. So when you're reaching out to schools, or when you're talking about, there needs to be more Black children and just youth, period, having access to these things, what kind of pushback are you getting, if any?
I think the biggest thing, no one denies that that Black youth don't have access to this. What they deny is the people trying to provide that service. For example, I'm a young Black male. I'm 29 years old. I'm African American. And I think that it comes off, some people don't take us as seriously. I think that's the big thing. You know what I'm saying? They, like, I've had people that like really question some things, asked us some really like funny questions about like, well, how do you do your accounting and stuff like that? And it's like, would you ask somebody like things like that, that when you're questioning, like, would you ask any other your other partners things like that? Those type of questions I think are volatile, and it shows their distrust and ignorance in the fact. So I have dealt with things like that. Really, there's like, we have partners that love working with us and that have been great, and there's people that we've that have hit us up and we've tried to work with but been very, very difficult, and very like distrusting. And I think the biggest thing in this industry is you really got to trust people. You need to vet them in for sure. I think that's totally fine. But you shouldn't write them off because they're Black subconsciously. I don't think anyone ever is going to be like, I didn't want to work with them because they were Black. But I think subconsciously, I think we will see a lot of pushback in general in many Black owned businesses, nonprofits, for profits in general. It's just how it is. We're still getting out of there. I mean, people forget, man, 60, 70 years ago, we weren't able to drink out the same water fountain. I like to remind people that, man, like ain't not everything changed yet. And I'm half Black, you know what I'm saying? Like, my dad's Black as charcoal, my mom's white. But if I walk into a room full of white people, what color am I? You know what I mean? That those are things I like to remind people about, especially like leaders like us that are really trying to get into the space and showcase this to people. I'd say we have to do our best to put our best foot forward and be our best self at all times, so that they have no pushback when we are providing these amazing solutions for people. Like, no one can argue how amazing the Community Tech Fest was. So like, let's say you dealt with somebody that maybe questioned how you guys were doing it, or was it just like, well, if they're not qualified, they shouldn't get it? Dude, I have beat out bachelor's degrees for my job, for jobs that I've applied for. And it's not because like they were trying to meet no quota. It's because I
Right.
had more experience. You know what I'm saying? I may not have had the bachelor's or master's degree, but my work ethic, my portfolio ended up showing otherwise versus the competition, you know? So I just say we have to just work a little bit harder.
Yeah. No, a lot of times we gotta work a lot harder. And as I mentioned earlier, and I've mentioned this in meetings and investor meetings and pitch competitions, with the summit, people were like, how did that go? Right. And of course there are people just asking in general, like, oh, how'd your event go? But then there are people that, are like, what was the impact of it? Like, how did it go? And it took a while for me to figure out how to verbalize it without like over explaining it. It took me like 2 weeks, and because I felt like we had crossed through a threshold, but I felt it. I didn't know how to say it right. And then eventually I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I know what it is. Before the summit, everyone who did work with us just had to take my word for it that there were a large number of Black people in technology. And when we did the summit, they were able to see and interact with those people. We had paid attendance from 10 different countries, right? Um, and so, but even after doing that, right, we still had people like, why do events just focus on recruiting? Or why do recruiting just focus? Seems like you're pretty good at doing events. And it's like, because your next question is, where do I find the talent? Your next question is, how is our brand stronger than other brands, or who's our competition and things of these nature? And we host our community. And so with the Community Tech Fest, as I mentioned earlier, I'm like, we've already proved the talent side, but we also talk about pipeline, right? So it's like, how do we expose people early enough and then support them throughout that journey? And with the Tech Fest, we were able to not only support those support and expose the attendees, but our exhibitors. So like, I brought Care 11, and you got on Care 11. They actually asked me who should they highlight, and I was like, Minnesota Esports, Code White, um, Serial Chillers, and then I told them they should check out some of the VR stuff, right?
Yep.
And that's exactly what they ended up doing, right? So it's like I was able to bring attention to me and my company for what I'm doing, and then share that attention with everyone else. I was able to bring attendees to the Black Tech Talent event, but then everybody else got leads from that and got that exposure. And it's like, now, differently from the summit, I've shown that the Black community in general rocks with what we're doing. And that's how we can actually solve the pipeline problem, because we've had pitch competitions we've been in where, publicly they're saying all great things and praise, and it's all your traction's amazing, da, da, da. But I'm hearing from people that are inside those rooms like, oh, they like you, they like what you're doing, but they think it's too big of a task for you to do. And it's like, well, now I just showed you I got the Black community in general. Showed you I got the Black tech community. I got the Black community in general. I convinced it would be different if we partnered with an organization that had a ton of kids and they just brought them. That would still be impressive, but like, it's just shifting them to our event. But because it's on a Saturday, it's not like a school field trip. So we contacted schools, we donated tickets, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it was still up to the schools to contact the parents and get the parents to come out. It was still up to us to talk to our community we already have and say, hey, bring your kids out. It was up to me, who was already influential just in entrepreneurship, and then the Black community in general, from me promoting events and stuff like that, to say, hey, I know you're probably not in tech professionally, but like, you need to bring your kid to this, and you need to learn about what this is. And for us to put together the marketing campaigns that we did in order to represent all of that messaging but still look dope and not overload people, was important. So there's definitely those moments of doubt, those moments of having to work harder than everybody else to get done what we have to get done. And that's part of the reason why we went for profit, because nobody can ask unless they're trying to invest money. Like nobody can ask us where, how do you do your accounting? Or don't worry about it. We're for profit, you know. And like even with you being a nonprofit, which is, like you mentioned, you want to be able to get grants and have that trust in that community, look and kickback. And it's like you're still getting mistrusted, and you went the nonprofit route, right?
Yep.
And so so I'm highlighting this and kind of re-going over it for our listeners to really understand like what it's like to do something great, and both great in what you've created but also great for the community, and like still experience mistrust, doubt, and you're actually doing it, like you're doing it and no one else is doing it. Like, so for us, even in the competitive nature of like when we first started, like, what's the difference between you and this and you and this and you and this? And it's like, first off, just because somebody has Black in tech in the name doesn't mean they're competition. We look at those as our either potential strategic partners, or if they don't want to work with us, they don't have to. But we went for profit so we could work with everybody because we can do whatever type of revenue streams we want to do. But also on the competitive side, it's like, listen, some of these organizations you're naming have been around forever. Some of them have chapters all over the country, and they still haven't been able to generate the level of excitement and the level of actual production community we've done in 17 months with no funding. Because we're for profit, there's no donations, right? There's no grants.
Yep.
There's nothing. We put up our own money, and now we are talking to investors, and that's looking really good. But it's 17 months of just us doing our thing. So it's like, people have to understand, especially if they want to be allies or corporate partners or sponsors, that we're out here doing amazing things with very little. And once they can come in and support, and as you mentioned, show that trust and really be a partner and be somebody that's for the community and the mission, the sky's the limit on what we're doing. And so people like yourself who experience what you experienced and said, I want to, instead of me waiting to receive this, I want to create it for others like me, and putting that weight on your shoulders and still working a full-time job and producing what you're producing, like you're a leader, right? And same thing with me, same thing with a lot of others. And instead of being highlighted as a leader or appreciated as a leader from outsiders, there's the distrust, or like, what's your true motive, or what's this? And it's like, at the end of the day, who else is doing what you're doing? Like, you took some high school kids who they took the initiative to put together a esports group. You volunteered as their supervisor, and then you saw even more potential in them, and you brought the community together and asked first too, like, should we make this our own organization? And that takes a lot to do and a lot to take on. And so even though some of these things for others may not be rocket science or may not feel like it's game changing or innovative, it is, because nobody else is doing it. The Community Tech Fest was innovative because who else did a community tech festival, right? That was focused on uplifting the Black community. There's not really community tech festivals here, period. There's a lot of, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
for us to do what we did and the way we did it with the lack of the type of resources others have, I think we have to start getting credit for that. And a lot of times we're gonna have to start taking credit for that, so that people understand, like, no, this was special because of this,
It's facts.
you
It's
know?
facts, man. 100%. I mean, you highlighted so many like amazing things about that, and like just the trials and tribulations, of going through that process. So like, I mean, you hit it on the nail, brother. Like, seriously.
For sure, for sure. So, at this point, we like to ask, if there's anything else you want to promote or highlight before we wrap up.
I think, I mean, overall, if there's any like community organizations that work with youth and you're looking for a new activity for your kids, for example, like we've had a lot of you guys approaching us with stuff like that, hit us up. Like if you like need like a location because you don't have one and you want to like use our space for activations, hit us up. Like we want to do is work with the community in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't always have to be esports related. Our goal is to provide esports and STEM initiatives in the community in general. And there's a lot of like, for example, STEM led Black organizations that are like getting together and getting kids into like game design and coding and all that stuff. And a lot of them operate remotely. And if you want to like bring your kids in and use our computers in our lab in Plymouth or work with our partners, if we can find a location that's closer to you that works out, we're willing to do anything that we can. And on top of that, if you want your kids to just have an additional activity on top of that, on top of what you guys are already providing, they can compete in competitions. They can actually be a member of Minnesota Esports Club. They can receive all the services that we provide as well. So there's a lot of ways that we work with the community, and don't think that it's limited, and don't be afraid to reach out. And if you're like a Parks and Rec that is wondering about esports, you definitely need to hit us up. We have a great track record, and you can definitely check our resources on who we've already worked with currently, which includes Bloomington, Woodbury, Prior Lake, Bemidji, Maple Grove, Plymouth, Phyllis Wheatley, 30,000 feet and more. So our goal is to leave a good impression with all these people so that when you do talk with them, they can tell you that, man, Minnesota Esports Club really like went above and beyond to provide an esports activation, for us in general, and just like engage with the community. And if you're a school and you already have a program and you want access to our coaches and stuff like that, hit us up. We would love to work out a way where like we can have our coaches, work with your kids and your programs that you already have established and get them the proper coaching that they need per game titles that they play. And that's really it. We host events for the general public, and check out our website, minnesotaesports.org. You can see our event calendar. We'll have stuff, all the time, and people can come and join and be a part of the action.
Awesome. You want to share your social sites?
You guys can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Peter Young. I think it's on LinkedIn. It's P Young IV. For my profile page. Other than that, you guys can follow us on Twitter. It's Minnesota Esports Club on Twitter. And I mean, that's really it. We do a lot of communication through our website and like our email campaign. So you guys can subscribe to our newsletter if you want to learn more. And Mike, thank you so much for having me at the Community Tech Fest. Like I said, it was like one of the best. It was the best activation that I've seen, tabling at events, and I did a lot of tabling this year for a plethora of events, and I just had such a great time. And being able to see people that look like me that are in this space, I think is the most important part.
For sure. Like I said, I appreciate you coming out and sharing your equipment and your games and being part of that portion of the exposure that we had going on. Just appreciate your mission and everything you have going on, and just you as a person as well. Just being very genuine and very, educated in your field, and just, everything you've put together and your resilience. So appreciate you coming to the Tech Fest. I appreciate you being on the podcast. And with that said, this is BTT Discussion, so we're out. This episode is brought to you by Sunrise Banks and Lifetime.